The first pick of a draft in any sport represents many things. They are the beacon of hope for a franchise that endured a tough year or maybe multiple tough years. And when you're that beacon of hope, there are high expectations. You're expected to lead a complete turnaround of a bottom-tier franchise. You can be expected to win awards like Rookie of the Year, play in All-Star games, receive the MVP, win a title, and in some cases, you may be expected to be a Hall of Famer. But with these insane expectations, it's easy to see why some can't live up to the sometimes unrealistic hype. But for the MLB, it seems that many of the top overall picks don't live up to this unrealistic hype. Whether it be injuries, off-the-field issues, or just not being able to perform at the highest level. The MLB has had many top picks perform well under expectations. But with all that said, let's look at how top overall picks in the MLB have impacted the team they were drafted by, and compare that to other sports leagues, and see why the MLB leads the way in these top picks underperforming.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Among major sports leagues in the United States, the MLB is by far the oldest. But among the amateur drafts in these leagues, the MLB Draft is the youngest. It wasn't until 1965 that the MLB held their first amateur draft. Prior to that, amateur players were free to sign with whatever club had interest in them, giving further proof of why teams such as the Yankees have had so much success throughout their history. And after the 1947 bonus rule did not work out great, every team except the Cardinals voted to forego the amateur draft at the 1964 Winter League meetings. And next year would give us the start. So let's first look at the top picks in the 20th century. In that 1965 draft, the first pick was Rick Monday, an outfielder out of Arizona State University who was drafted by the Kansas City Athletics. Monday won a national championship and was named Player of the Year the prior year, so being selected first overall wasn't too much of a surprise. Rick Monday would go on to play 19 seasons in the majors, making the All-Star team twice and winning the World Series in 1981. He would finish his career with a WAR 33.1. For comparison, that is about the same as Anthony Rendon's. Rick Monday's career was nothing spectacular, but the longevity and consistency of Monday gave him a solid career, even earning a whole 2 votes for the Hall of Fame. Despite Monday's stats not being Hall of Fame level or even what a casual fan may expect of a first pick, among the 35 first overall picks in the 20th century, Rick Monday's career WAR of 33.1 ranks him 7th. It wasn't until 1977 when Harold Baines was drafted first overall that someone would pass him. And the 10 years following Rick Monday's selection would easily give us the worst stretch of first picks in the draft's history. From 1966 to 1975, only Jeff Burroughs would end his career with a WAR over 10. And notable players among these 10 would be Stephen Chilcott, who never made the majors, Danny Goodwin, who was drafted first overall twice in this period, and David Clyde and Dave Roberts, who both finished with a WAR below 1. Perhaps it was the inexperience in organizations in developing these highly touted draft picks and the new pressures that previous top prospects didn't have to face that led to these disappointing outcomes. From injuries to rushing players through the league, it's a common trend amongst all top picks that end up being what some may call a bust. But what constitutes a bust? There are many incidents of busts that are beyond an organization's control. Injuries and off-the-field issues have plagued many top picks across all sports. Among MLB first picks, there are many that were obvious busts due to injury problems, and most were pitchers. Other players have faced off-the-field issues, whether it be contract negotiations or personal problems. Examples in the 20th century are Danny Goodwin and Tim Belcher, who did not sign with the team they were drafted by, or Josh Hamilton, Brian Taylor, and later on Matt Bush, who all faced personal problems that derailed their careers with the team they were drafted by. But aside from the players that became busts for issues outside of an organization's control, how many first picks in this time were busts for their performance? An organization drafts a player first overall to have an impact on a losing team, and hopefully one day, bring them a championship. So let's look at how these first picks in the 20th century impacted the team they were drafted by and brought them closer to a championship. Eliminating 6 top picks who never played a game for the team they were drafted by, the average season WAR for players on the team they were drafted by was 1.55. For reference, that average WAR would rank them 257th among players in 2022. In general, a WAR over 2 is genuinely thought of as a solid starter, such as Jonathan Scope before this year. And among these 29 players, 12 would have a WAR of 2 or above while playing for the team they were drafted by, with 7 going above 2.5. And overall, these first picks would on average give their teams 0.43 in added win probability, and 0.4 in championship win probability. And looking at the stats and averages, overall, regardless of off-field issues, I put these first picks in 4 categories based on their impact on the team they were drafted by. These are who I feel were absolute busts. Again, some of these were beyond the team's control. The second category is the meh category. These are players who played a few years and were below average, but gave their teams at least minimal value. These are the players in the good category, who had solid careers with the team they were drafted by. Again, they aren't elite, but they provided plenty of value for their team. And then there is the elite category. These are the players who had a huge impact for their team and became rare gems. The only one I was on the fence about was Darryl Strawberry. Some even consider Strawberry a bust for his off-the-field issues that came later in his career. But the value he gave the Mets in his prime makes him a great first pick despite the issues that would later come. But when we look at the first picks based on their entire career, then players in these categories shift. We see the amount of busts go down, some go from a bust to a meh. A player such as Jeff Burrows, who won an MVP, goes from a bust to good. And someone such as Josh Hamilton goes from a bust to elite, with a prime similar to Darryl Strawberry. But before further explanation, let's look at the first 20 top picks in the 21st century. If there's one thing for certain in all of this, so far, top picks in the 21st century have fared better than the majority in the 20th century. There would be absolute busts that happen as a result of issues on and off the field, such as Matt Bush, Brady Aiken, or Matt Appel. But these times have also gave us some of the best first picks of all time. While the years following Rick Monday's selection gave us a rough period of top overall picks, the 8 years following the unfortunate pick of Matt Bush gave us perhaps the best period of top picks. From 2005 to 2012, we would see Justin Upton, Bryce Harper, and Carlos Correa get drafted and go on to have a big impact on their team and the entire league. Most notably from this time, for the first time in the draft's history, we would see pitchers that ended up being elite. The 3 aces drafted were David Price, Steven Strasburg, and Garrett Cole. And since these 3 were drafted, they would make 13 All-Star teams, lead their leagues in strikeouts 4 times, lead their leagues in wins and ERA 3 times, and David Price would be the first #1 pick to win the Cy Young. And let's compare these 3 to the 10 pitchers taken first overall who signed and played in the majors before them. These 3 have a combined ERA of 3.25, 1.35 lower than the previous 10, 0.3 better in WHIP, and the combined career WAR of these 3 is almost 24 points higher than the previous 10. And a common theme between many of the top picks taken as pitchers that didn't work out is arm problems. Even among those 3 aces drafted in the late 2000s, all have faced arm problems like every pitcher in the game has, with none more than Steven Strasburg. There's obviously huge risk in drafting a pitcher first overall, and even with an injury-prone pitcher like Steven Strasburg, organizations can only hope they at least give them a few great years like Strasburg did. And now let's go past the pitchers of the 21st century and see how all of these players have impacted the team they were drafted by. Of these 20 picks, all but 5 have played for the team they were drafted by, and their average season WAR is 1.77. For reference, that would rank them 225th for players in the 2022 season. Among these 15 players, 8 would have a WAR over 2, with 5 having a WAR over 3, which is the same amount of players in the 20th century with a smaller sample size. And the win probability added and championship win probability added would also see an increase. And ranking these 20 players in the 4 categories based on their impact on the team they were drafted by, here is the bust category in my opinion. Once again, some of these were out of control of the organization, and obviously Adrian Gonzalez and Dansby Swanson aren't bust, as we will see, but they never played a game for the team they were drafted by. Here is who I put in the meh category. I put question marks over Royce Lewis, Casey Mize, and Spencer Torkelson because they still have a lot of room to grow, and could easily turn things around as we've seen countless times throughout the league. I created a really great category for Justin Upton's time with the Diamondbacks, and the elite category has more members than the previous century, with Adley Rutschman having a question mark because he's very early into his career, but is well on track or may already be a Baltimore legend. And looking at the entire careers of these first picks, the amount of busts would be cut in half, with 2 moving to the meh category. Mickey Moniak still has some time, as Philly fans know. Dansby moves to the good category, and Adrian Gonzalez and Justin Upton, though close, are elite first picks to me. And looking at all the first picks from 1965 to 2020, based on their performances on the team they are drafted by, I would say 23 were busts, including Danny Goodwin twice. And important to note here, 3 of these players did not sign. And including these 3, 10 did not play a game for the team they were drafted by. I put 10 in the meh category, 10 in the good category, 1 in the really great category, and 12 in the elite category. And for their entire careers, I would say 16 are bust. 10 for now have meh careers, 15 have good careers, and 15 of these first picks are elite. And going back to those awards and accolades some top first picks may be expected to win, let's see what these top picks received in their career. Overall, 4 first picks would go on to win the Rookie of the Year, with the most recent being Carlos Correa in 2015. 25 would make at least one All-Star game, with 18 making multiple. 6 would take home the MVP, David Price would be the only Cy Young winner. 7 would win the World Series with the team they were drafted by, with Steven Strasburg being the only one to take home the World Series MVP. And as of today, there are still 3 Hall of Famers, but that will change soon. Joe Mauer will receive serious consideration for the Hall of Fame and has a good chance to make it down the line. David Price is another one who could have serious consideration, and Bryce Harper and Garrett Cole look like they may be first ballot. It will be very interesting to see how the stubborn Hall of Fame voters look at Carlos Correa after the scandal. If he gets in, then you could make a great argument for arguably the best first pick of all time, Alex Rodriguez. But with all this in mind, how do these accolades compare to other leagues? MLB first picks are last among the 4 leagues in multiple All-Star appearances, Rookie of the Years, titles won with the team they were drafted by, and Hall of Famers. The NFL would be the only league to tie the MLB in a category, with both having 6 MVPs taken first overall. And adding these accolades up, the MLB is the closest to the NFL. But the question here is measuring by accolades and performance. Why is the success rate of first picks in the MLB much worse compared to other leagues? Well, the first and obvious reason is just the nature of the game and the development system. As every Little League coach tells their team after losing 20 games in a row, baseball is a game of failure. If we consider a 300 average elite, then the average of selecting an elite first pick is not elite. If 12 of the 55 first picks are elite by my standards, then that is a 21% success rate, and 27% by entire career standards. And the point I'm getting at here is overall, top picks in the MLB are always a gamble, especially compared to the other sports leagues. Of the 16 pitchers who signed after being taken first overall, 10 would have arm issues that put them on the disabled list early in their career. Of course, not all of these injuries will completely derail their career, but it's still a massive concern for fans in the organization that spent millions of dollars on this single player. And no other sport has to deal with this issue. Of course, every sport brings a possibility of injury, especially the NFL, but a 62% injury rate for a highly touted position brings a challenge unique to baseball, and a better chance of drafting a bust or a meh. And another challenge unique to baseball is a development system. The NHL is the most similar to the MLB in this sense, but top draft picks in the MLB usually spend much more time in the minors. And this early development gives players plenty of time to derail their career. Players such as Brian Taylor, Josh Hamilton, and Matt Bush had off-the-field issues in the minors that prevented them from playing in the majors for their drafted team. And in this system, there have been multiple cases such as David Clyde, where players were rushed to the majors amidst organizational pressures and other circumstances, and end up failing due to the pressure and inexperience. And on the other end, if players don't develop to the system in time, we've seen multiple cases of players trading their top overall pick for a variety of reasons, with Sean Abner, Adrian Gonzalez, Mark Appel, and Dansby Swanson never playing for their drafted team due to trades. And this brings in another reason why MLB draft picks don't always work out. With the wide array of talent available throughout the league and the time players need to develop, The MLB is the only league where you see a top overall pick get traded before playing a major league game. And for major league teams, the future of a losing franchise usually doesn't fall in the hands of one player. As anyone who knows anything about the Angels would know, one generational player can't change a franchise the way an NFL or NBA player can. And with the generational player we're talking about, teams don't need the first pick to get a Mike Trout, as any of the 19 teams who pass on him would know. And the vast amount of rounds give teams many chances to find a rare gem. Examples include Nolan Ryan going in the 12th round, Albert Pujols going in the 13th round, Kenny Lofton in the 17th, Travis Hafner in the 31st, Mark Burley in the 38th, and Hall of Famer Mike Piazza not going until the 62nd round. And the first-year player draft is also not the only opportunity for MLB teams to find great players. Every team has found at least one international signing that has had a huge impact on the team. And while we focused on the Rule 4 draft in this video, the Rule 5 draft is another unique aspect to the MLB draft system. This draft allows players who signed at age 18 or younger and played 5 professional seasons, or 4 if they were 19, to be redrafted. Here we've seen great players like Johan Santana, Shane Victorino, and former first overall pick Josh Hamilton have huge impacts on teams. So overall, first picks in the MLB don't have the same success rate as other leagues, mainly due to the nature of the game. As is the case with busts in any sports, the big leagues can be an entire different challenge they aren't prepared for. Injuries also play a huge factor, and a prospect developing too slow or fast can derail any future with their team. The MLB Draft provides unique challenges to players and organizations that has created many bust, average, good, and elite/Hall of Fame level players taken first overall. Just going by the amount of players who never played a game for their drafted team, it's easy to see why the success rate amidst these expectations is lower in the MLB. And in the future, with better development programs, more exposure, and increased talent, I'm sure the success rate will rise as it already has in the 21st century.